Hi everybody. Today we are going to make a butter crock, sometimes known as a butter. However, due to a letter received from Butter Incorporated, I can no longer say butter. So from here on out, there are going to be butter beales. All right, I've got 1 pound and 3 ounces of clay, and I've got my laser set to where I'm gonna get my specifications for sizing. So a lot of times you'll see people throw these things upside down. So the lid would be down here, and then the jar part of the bell would come up, and they're, you know, it's real common. It's also kind of boring. So what we're gonna do is throw this in a vertical position. This is a technical throw. It's one of the more difficult things that I make. We'll go ahead and get this clay centered up. You know what I thought when we received that letter from you know what I thought, Nathan? I thought, fuck, we finally made it, man. You know, they noticed us. We have arrived, that is right. But we have to comply. It was a very legal sounding letter. All right, so get this thing all nice and centered up. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna open all the way through to the back. See, I've got my laser set at 4.5 inches wide and 2.5 inches tall. So the 4.5 inches wide is going to signify the outer rim of my gallery jar, and the 2.5 inches is going to signify the bottom flange of the lid. So I'm going to just open this up a touch. All right, slow this guy down, tighten it up a little. So we're gonna have to make this bottom part kind of one shot here. Don't want to pull all the way through. Need to leave a bunch of that mass on top for the lid. So can't really see from this angle. I think I've got it. That's about right. I'm gonna take any rib that's got a 90 on it. I'm gonna kind of just section that guy off. Okay. We're going to put this cylinder through kind of a lot of abuse, so we're going to have to stiffen it up with a torch. And I'll probably torch that bottom rim for something like 20-30 seconds, but I'm assuming the editing will take most of that out. Okay, now we've got that thing good and stiffened up, and we're going to go ahead and close this off and make our knob. So throwing to center is a skill in itself. We're just gently going to squeeze the clay, press it down on top, and throw towards the center of your wheel. Closing it up. See, this is a lot more efficient than trying to collar to center, which we're also going to do at some point, but right this minute we're going to just throw. All right, keeping that top from squeezing out. I've got one finger on the inside, one finger on the outside, and I'm just sort of laterally pushing and laying that clay down below. Okay, getting there. Maybe one more pass. Take a little bit of that mass out of there, bring it towards the center, and looking pretty good. So now we're gonna treat this like we would any other lid. Gonna throw a little cylinder, gonna trim the top. We're gonna get it close to being closed up. Then here's a little pro tip for you. We're gonna scrape away a little of that slurry right where the joint's gonna be made, and that'll help to stop it from cracking as it's drying. Because wherever there's extra water, there's extra shrinkage. Get this thing starting to get just a touch thin right here. So we still have a lot of abuse to put this guy through. We're gonna stiffen it up a touch. All right, close this lid up. I mean, what does have? Do they have somebody there that's just going through online listings, making sure nobody's stealing their butter name. They have to, right? They would have to do that. They'd have to have somebody whose whole job it is to look for jerks like me selling butter. And I thought like a coffee cup. I didn't even think it was a real thing, like a trademark thing, but it is definitely a trademark thing. Need a needle. Oh, never mind, I found it. Yeah, probably. Chat, digging it out. Getting ready to close this thing up. Just gonna make sure I don't have any slurry at the spot for the joint. That should be good. I'm gonna try to not get any water in there and just sort of collar this guy tight. Right on through there and right across. So we're gonna reinforce this by pressing down with our rib. So I'm gonna take this guy, flatten it out a touch. Gotta be gentle here. Maybe just a little bit of water. And here we go. Getting there. I like to get this out just a little bit wider when I'm shaping the knob. Losing a little bit of pressure there. So it's closed up now. A little bit of heat is gonna puff this thing up as well as stiffen that little weak spot. So too much heat though and we'll pop it. We don't want to do that. Well, you guys know how it is. Sometimes it's a battle. Got that thing just about right. Now I'm gonna finish making that knob. Got a couple of tools here that I like to use. My little silicone rib makes a nice bottom to this knob, and I like to cut in a little edge too. So here we are, halfway to our butter BEALE. Almost halfway, like 35%. Shape this thing up a touch, like that. Check the bottom, not too bad. Clean this up just a little bit. So in a perfect world, you wouldn't have to mess with the gallery after you do this. And we're gonna hope for the best on it. But just in case, we'll go through trimming one of these. So now, I like to fire all my jars together. And that means you're gonna have a spot where the glaze has to stop on both of them. So I like to use this profiler to give me a good line to stop my glaze. And today we're using Kentucky Mudworks Mulholland. It's a very nice light brick red colored clay. So the exposed parts look good. They take sanding really well also. So we're gonna go ahead and just clean that line. Okay, so right here is a great spot to run your wax. And down and around. Just trim this guy up a little bit. If you guys have watched me before, you know I really like to use slip to decorate, and we're gonna do that here today also. So, pretty happy with this. Let's knock this wobbly lid back on center. All right, disaster averted. Take a little bit of slip, right like so. And then we'll just run that up. This way we have something interesting for the glaze to act on. All right, so you can see I've got my laser set and I'm right to the very edge here and I'm right to the very bottom. So I'm gonna leave my laser right where it's at and we're gonna go ahead and throw the bottom to the Butter BEALE. Just been informed by legal that you cannot call it a Butter BEALE. So maybe French butter crock or just regular butter crock. We'll continue. All right, so I've got 1 pound, 5 ounces to make my little jar. I'm gonna set that up, get it centered. And open. So I see my reference line and I'm gonna want that right about in the center of my wall to form the gallery. So you see I'm keeping it there right now. This laser is a super handy tool. If you don't use one, you may want to try, give it a shot. For a long time I was a purist and I wanted to only use a throwing gauge like it was you know, 200 BC, but turns out modern tools make everything so much better. So, almost there. Gotta drop this bottom a touch more. Okay, that's about where we need to be. As I'm pulling this one up, I'm gonna leave a fat ring of clay on top so that I have a good spot to cut in my gallery. And what we're gonna do is we need to be above our reference line for height. When I go to cut the bell off of that bat, I'm gonna take a couple of shims, probably 3/16 shims. I'm gonna lay them on either side, and I'm gonna cut right through the bottom of that bell, and I'm gonna lose that little bit that's on the bottom. And this way, there's no messing around trying to trim that weird spot or anything. I can just kind of take a sponge and round it off, or a red silicone rib, and there's no more messing around. So check in here. I'm a touch wider than I need to be. So on my next pull, I'm gonna tighten up, and going a little fast. Get that where it needs to go. So to accommodate that fitting into this, I need to be above this line and then make the room up from the thickness of the floor, which is going to be really close because I'm going to cut that 3/16 off of the bottom of that. So if we go just a little bit above this, we don't want it getting stuck when it's glazed or anything like that. So just a touch higher, maybe getting real close. All right, that gives me enough room that I can drop my gallery in, make a nice cool fitting lid. All right, there we go. The gallery is the interface between the body of the jar and the lid. And in this case, we're going to be having an inset. Okay, so we've got the body almost ready. I'm going to just straighten it up with this rib. I like to have this little overhang because I think it looks cool after it's done. Okay, very close to being finished. So now I got a tool for this gallery. So I'm gonna hold it up right here. That is just a Kemper tool that I sanded exactly into the shape that I like. And I'm gonna be able to take the laser and just run this thing straight down. A little bit of water in there. Okay, so that's what we're looking for. Got this rim right here. We don't want to knock too much of that off because that's also a very good spot to stop your wax when you're glazing. And as far as this stuff goes, any little modifications in here can be made during the trimming. So get this cleaned up, and got to put a little decoration on the outside. So go ahead and put a little of the slip on. That's a little too much. It's all right. Let's see. So today we'll do a random slip pattern on this one. So we'll slow this guy way down, take my red rubber rib, and we'll just start jiggling it. All right, so that's pretty cool. Gonna look good on the slip. Let's clean that bottom up to make footing this just a touch easier. Okay, that's a winner. Okay, so despite my best efforts, mistakes happen. I used that torch to heat this guy up, and then I closed it all the way up, and I didn't allow any pressure relief. So as that air on the inside cooled, it shrank, and it caused this lid to squish in. In the future, if you're using a torch, make sure to pop a little hole in the bottom. All right, so now we're in the future. We've got some dried ones, and I'm gonna go ahead and show you how to cut this thing off. So we don't necessarily want to wire it directly off of the bat because we'll have that extra clay that we don't need. That's just going to be in the way. So we'll take small gauge wire, run it right through here. All right, so these were 3/16 shims. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. The bottom's not in too bad a shape. So let's see how this guy fits and see if there's any trimming that's going to be required. Looks in pretty good in there. Fits pretty good in here. So overall, that is a winner. Now there is an idea I've been thinking about, and I think we may want to fill the little knob in so that butter doesn't get stuck inside of there. So we'll take just a little bit of clay, ball that guy up, one little drop right on in there, and we'll just pack it right in. We'll hope for the best. Before we fire this guy, flip this over, flip the bottom, fire them together in the bisque, and then we will wax from this line here down to about here, and then the same on the inside of the gallery. Fire them with glaze together so that they match up. So here it is, one butter BEALE. Hope everybody enjoyed the video. Hope everybody learned something, but remember, it's just mud. Well, thanks for watching. If anybody has any questions, you can email me at eric@bealepottery.com and follow us on Instagram.